Okie dokie, folks, and welcome back to Monday Night Shaw. I'm Kyle Shaw, aka the Canadian Goose, and on the show today I have Michael Allen Richard Clark. He's been wrestling with the PWA, LPW. He's big in Saskatchewan, all kinds of stuff. You even did some AEW stuff this year, right?
Yeah, I did. I was actually at all of the Canadian shows. I didn't wrestle on all of them. I wrestled on two of them, and I did other things on various ones, but I was at all of them.
Awesome. So you're like one of the biggest stars we've ever had on here.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, no, it's amazing. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Well, let's get started with that. How did you enjoy being on AEW and whatnot? You did WWE too, right?
Yeah, I did this year actually. We were at the show in Winnipeg. I can't remember. We've been all over. We were at the show in Winnipeg. They didn't use anybody for that one, but still really nice to be at Raw, right? The last time I was there was in February of 2020, actually. So been a little while since I was on a WWE show. I was supposed to actually do one last year, but I ended up, they postponed the show. And then I went down and trained with the Nightmare Factory, so it kind of
nice.
Clashed with that, right?
That's good that you got to train there. Did you get any like actual like in-ring experience with like Goldust or Cody Rhodes? Are those the guys that are running that stuff?
Yeah, Goldust wasn't there. He has his own in Texas, I believe, but it's run by QT Marshall and Cody. So lots of hands-on, especially from QT. QT, for us anyways, he was there nearly every day except when they do Dynamite on Wednesdays, which was really nice. He's fantastic. A lot of people, he's very underrated. I don't know if people know how good he is, but he's wildly athletic. Just like one story that I have about him, I love QT to death, but someone was trying to figure out this sequence of like a back handspring. They roll back and then they do the head scissor and then flip around. Mm-hmm. And QT's like, they're trying to break it down, and QT's trying to break it down for them. And QT's like, let me just see. And then he just does it. He does a back handspring to his hands, back to his feet, rolls back, does the thing. And he's like, okay, here's how you do it, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, and he's like, I've never done this before. Let's just try it. And he just did it perfectly. So guy's wildly athletic. Billy Gunn's actually also down there.
Oh, cool.
Handles a lot of he's not there in the day as much, but he's there for the night classes. And Billy Gunn's like, once again, another fantastic. It's really cool because they will run drills, like a long drill, and QT kind of can break down the mechanics of everything. And then Billy Gunn, you run it again in front of Billy, and Billy breaks down all the psychology and the intensity, your energy, things like that. He's very good at that. So it's very cool having two different kind of perspectives on what you're doing, and it's really good. It's fantastic. I loved training down there, and I love Georgia.
Wait, that seems really good. I actually I wrestled a fella, Raiden the Canadian Destroyer, and he had trained there. And I wrestled him in like one of his first matches in Canada, and he did really, really well. So like
he trained in the Nightmare Factory, eh?
Yeah, that's what he told me anyway.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they also have this guy named Luke Sampson who helps out with a lot of the day-to-day stuff, and they're all really good talents, really good guys. I have not one bad word to say about anything down there. Not that I'm going to sit here and talk bad about somebody, but no, it was the best experience. Me and Levi Knight went down.
I was just going to say, I had heard that Levi Knight was there too.
Yeah, we lived there for a number of months. Sean Moore's down there right now, and I've been back. I went back in the beginning of October they run their showcase shows at the end of their camps. So I went down for their showcase show, and I plan on going down again. I want to, especially for the one that Sean's going to be on, I want to go down for that one. So
yeah, no, Sean's amazing. I like that guy's a beast.
Yeah,
he's like, I see him on shows, and I'm like, I'm scared to have a match with him, you know.
That's pretty funny. He's such a chill guy, but maybe I just know a different side of him too. But no, Sean, like, He's the one guy that, we've had a lot of carloads of guys come through, me and Sean, and then you add Parsons and David O'Doyle and Prime and Brett Morgan, Giselle, like various people have driven with us like on a consistent basis. But the only like two true consistent guys making those drives now, anyways, it's still me and Sean, and he's my road wife, literally.
Peas and carrots.
He's the only I don't think I've spent more time in a car with anybody but Sean, for sure.
Well, I mean, it's always good to have good riding partners too, like that's one of those like weird things that people don't really think about in wrestling is there's a lot of travel involved. Like
Especially Canadian wrestling.
Yeah. Like even driving from Edmonton to Calgary takes like 3 hours, which is not very long on a Canadian wrestling trip, but is still a pretty long time by most standards. And yeah, if you're in the car with people that don't want to talk, then it can be pretty lousy or whatnot. Or if the people do want to talk, but all they want to do is talk shit,
that's wrestling, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to think that we're starting to really get away from that, especially in the Alberta scene, at least with Love Pro and the Dungeon guys, and the professionalism that's being upheld in the newer generations that are coming along. It's certainly a lot different. I mean, you've been around for a few years, even from when you started and from when I started. It's certainly a lot less dramatic and a lot different than it was when I got brought up, which is really nice to see, because I remember I was 19 when I first started, and I couldn't believe. I remember being like, man, I'm in high school again. This is worse than high school, actually. Like the drama and the cattiness, and it's just like, what is this is just wrestling. Like, let's just have fun,
I completely agree with that. And like I'm super bad too, because I will literally just let people walk all over me and take advantage of me just so that they'll like me, and then I can stay in wrestling. But for the most part, like everything has gotten a lot better. There's no doubt about that. You said you started when you're 19. How old are you now?
I'm 32.
Oh wow! So you've been wrestling for well over 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, if you count the pandemic and whatever, but yeah, no, I had my first match when I was 19 and a bit. So yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your training and upcoming and your first match and whatnot. Because like I know you're a Saskatchewan fella. Did you train and get started in Saskatchewan?
I did. So when I first started, I played hockey for a lot of years. I played some junior and whatever else and bounced around. And when I was done with that, I wanted to train to wrestle, and I made a goal for myself. It's kind of funny looking back, but I wanted to get to a certain weight, and then I would train to wrestle. So I wanted to get to 190 pounds, and then I would train to wrestle. And I used to be pretty small. I used to be like 150 pounds.
Oh, okay. So you were trying to gain weight.
So it was a lot of weight to gain. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it wasn't good weight, but I mean, I didn't know. I was pretty new to all this stuff at the time. But anyways, I got to a certain weight, and I started looking up local promotions just to see where I could train and stuff, because I knew of CWE at the time, and I knew that they had like training in Winnipeg. So I'm like, there must be stuff like elsewhere. So I started looking up wrestling around here. And the only thing I could find was Gold Dragon Wrestling, which was out of Moose Jaw. Mm-hmm. So I was like kind of thinking about, I don't know any better, right? Just kind of thinking about going out to train with them. And then I found a website that listed every Canadian indie, or not Canadian, every indie in the world. Like it would have a weekly calendar, if you will.
This is cagematch.com?
No, it wasn't Cage Match. It was like a weird blog, but it would be like Monday, there's wrestling here, like UK, Canada, like everywhere, literally all over the world if it was submitted. And of course, Fridays, Saturdays, the lists were gigantic. But I started seeing one. I saw one that said High Impact Wrestling in Regina, so HIW. And I was like, I wonder if they just tour around like Danny does with CWE, because CWE would just, they come to Regina, they go to other towns, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if they're based here. And then I looked ahead, and no, sure enough, every month they're here. Okay. So then I looked them up and I messaged them, to which I got no reply. This was in spring of 2011. Yes. And I actually reached out to somebody that was on their like their Facebook page, that looked like they had something to do with it. It actually ended up being Keely was her name. She was the music girl. And she kind of directed me, gave me an email, to which they never replied either. Classic wrestling, right?
Yeah.
So then I reached out. No, I didn't reach out. I went to a show in June, and being like, you know how you are when you're a fan, you're like, oh, if these guys are like half decent, I'll let them train me. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, just looking back, it's so idiotic. But I went to it, and I guess I deemed them good enough, which is like ridiculous to think about. But I really didn't get any answers, so I went up to their heavyweight champion at the time, who was King Cash, and I said, hey, I want to train the wrestle. What do I do? And we were in a small venue. It had a low ceiling, so they had a short ring, actually, at the time. The ring was only about, I don't know, 1.5 feet off the ground, maybe. And so that was a little jarring, because I'd only been to like 2 indie wrestling shows before. I didn't even really know indie wrestling existed. And then he directed me downstairs to the former owner. Buster Brody was his wrestling name at the time, but Charlie Puchette. So I walked downstairs into the bar, and there's all these wrestlers sitting around a table, which is pretty intimidating. And Charlie's a big guy. And I went up to Charlie and I said, hey, I want to train to wrestle. And he said, okay. And he gave me his number, and then he gave me they had a show like the next week for like one of Wavel's shows, actually, like an indigenous thing. So I went to that, and that's where I like took my first bumps, was in early June 2011. And then he sent me to an address, and I trained with them, and they had a ring outside in a yard in the hood. He rented a garage in the backyard in the smack dab middle of the hood in Regina. And the house was actually separate from the garage that he rented, because he used to work on vehicles, like fix and resell and whatever. They had the ring outside because it was the summertime, and we just trained to wrestle outside, or I got trained to wrestle outside in the middle of the hood. And I had a plethora of hands helping me. Some people always disagree with this, but the big bulk that I remember was just me and Robbie Gamble. And this was a guy that was probably only in for a year, so he probably had no business training anybody, but he was a teacher.
All right.
He was an accomplished amateur style wrestler. So he was a coach and everything. And so he was able to teach very well, in my opinion. And we just one-on-one would just run things over for hours and hours and hours. And that's sort of where I got my start. It was an interesting experience, like being a kid from a really small town, not really experiencing the rough side of life, to training to wrestle outside in the hood. And the next summer, actually, that house out front was being rented out, and people were dealing drugs out of that house. So on any given day, Chuck, or Charles, we called him Chuck, would always say that there was like 100 people would walk through the yard, and there's just needles everywhere, and the very druggiest of looking people going through that yard when we're trying to wrestle. So quite an eye-opening experience for that.
That's really wild. I mean, when I first started training, I started with Andrew Hawk here in Edmonton, and the ring was in his backyard. And so it was kind of like, I think Hawk had significantly more than like 1 year in the business. So like I had no qualms about being trained by him or whatnot, but it was very interesting, especially like if it had rained recently or anything, we had to go and with towels and wipe the ring up. And, sometimes the boards would break and you just have to go under the ring and shift things around. It was,
like we would always have to tear down half the ring. Like we would always take the padding and the canvas off and put it in the garage, and then stack the wood in case it did rain. So we did that a lot. I didn't have any qualms being trained. I didn't know any better. Like I was just happy to be there, happy to be in the ring. Look, like I said, looking back, I'm very lucky that he was who he was, because when I was a year in, there's no way I could have ever trained somebody to be a professional. I don't even know if I could train somebody now, never mind, but Gamble, like I'm really lucky that he was a good teacher and stuff, but I had a lot of hands really helping in, like, Jumpin' Joe and Rex Roberts and like these Saskatchewan legends really helped me along. And even Chuck, like the way Chuck would train was I'm really thankful for it, because he would do things like I'd be training with Bull Bodner. He was a sparring partner of mine for a long time. And he would do things like, oh, rope is broken. You have a match. You guys can't hit the ropes. Or Bull is hurt, like his back's hurt. You can't bump him. Find out a way to, you're still going over, but find out a way to beat him without bumping him once.
Yeah, I really enjoy those kind of like creative exercises.
Yeah, Chuck he had a very good mind for things like that. Very good creative mind, and very good, like Paul Heyman could hide people's flaws and accentuate their strengths.
So after you did the training with those fellas in Regina there and whatnot, when did they actually decide, okay, here's going to be your first match? And when you did do your first match, did you wrestle under the name Michael Allen Richard Clark, or is that something that came later?
No, I did not. So I went up on a tour in La Loche and I reffed. And I think I only reffed that entire tour. And then the second tour was in August of 2011. So just 2 months after I started training, I started having matches. And I was definitely not ready, but experience is the best teacher, I truly believe. And it is what it is. But yeah, so I don't know how they decided I think they just threw it in, especially like up in the Northern Reserves. They just get some reps in kind of. And then I started wrestling here and there in places, not as much in Regina. I did wrestle one show in Regina, but I wrestled more like in Yorkton and Melville and stuff. And they just used my name, Michael Clark. And then they kind of came up with the whole name because it spells Mark, haha, hee, and it just kind of went from there.
So that wasn't your idea?
Oh, I didn't pick any of it. No. The only thing I picked at the time, like obviously I turned it into my own thing. Now I pose to my name, I this and that and whatever. Like I made it into something, but no, I didn't pick anything. They were very, I want to say that I was one of the last. I wasn't old school brought in, but I was the last of like the last herd of the old school guys of, I don't get no say. This is what it is. This is your character. This is what you do. That's that. Like, deal with it, right? Like nowadays, I'm like, I'm not jealous because I'm happy with my name, but back in the day, I'm like, oh, but it was funny because nowadays it's like, oh, you kids are spoiled because you get to pick your own name and your own this and that, right? So it's a big time. It's a very different climate nowadays than even what it was 10 years ago, at least in some of the smaller areas. But yeah, these guys were very old school. So they like picked my music. They picked everything for me. The only thing they didn't pick is they didn't pick my colors. So the reason I had started wearing an orange singlet at the time, and the reason I did that is because when I went to that first show in June, I mean, you're not going to remember everybody's name, right?
No.
And I remember everybody was like, black, blue, red, like this and that. Everybody was wearing like colors. And I'm like these, like, like a few colors is what I'm saying. So I'm like, I'm going to wear orange because if people come to a show, maybe they won't remember my name, but maybe they'll remember the guy in orange. I'm the only guy who wore orange at that time, or I'm the only guy wearing this color at the time. So that's why I picked what I picked. But yeah, I didn't have say in anything just about until Cash took over, I want to say. And King Cash ended up buying HIW in the beginning of 2013. And things got a little more, a little more freedom then. I'm not complaining about the lack of freedom per se, but yeah, I didn't have say over my name or my music or really anything at that time.
Is it something you ever gave any like consideration to like changing? Like I know, I mean, Harlan Abbott changed his name from heavy metal. I ended up changing my name from Canadian Goose, but then I changed it back because I like Canadian Goose better. Um, but like, did you just did you give any consideration to just coming up with your own thing at any point?
No, honestly, like in the beginning, they did kind of ask me if I had any name ideas, and then it was just kind of like, nah. And then they gave me this name, and I started just, like if you give me something, I'm going to do my best that I can with it.
Mhm.
I'll do the best job I can. I'll find something creative with it, something that works with it, things like that. So now I have what I have, but I, especially now, never, 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 because it's so long, it's ridiculous. Like you look at, it's like a talking point to a point. Like you look at rundowns of cards and everybody two name, too big, four name, sticking, hanging out, and then
Mhm.
two name. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like even when I did those AEW matches, people like random fans were kind of clowning my name, and like that's great. I love that. Talk about me. I don't care. It's great.
Yeah.
You know what I
No,
mean?
I mean,
Then you can say like, oh, I thought this guy was two guys, and it's like because I have four names or whatever, right? And it's just funny. Like, no, I love it because nobody has who has long names. Who has a long name like that? Nobody. It's different. I
yeah.
love how different it is. Like I don't like it when people acronym it because it takes like I love how long it is. Like that's the whole point. When I was at AEW in Winnipeg and I had that tag match with Sean against Top Flight, QT was there obviously, and they asked me for my name, and I told them my name, and they're like, oh, that's like, oh, I don't know, like we can use that. We'll just do Michael Clark. And I was kind of like, oh, that sucks, right? Like, kind of a little bummed out. But hey, I get a match. Like, okay, be positive,
Mhm.
right? So then I saw QT later. I'm like, hey, QT, like, they won't let me use my name. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, that's your gimmick, though. That you're blah blah. And then he went and talked to somebody, and then they used they changed it to my entire name. They're like, oh, why didn't you tell us that was your gimmick? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know what I can and can't say, right? Like, I don't want to step
Yeah.
on any toes, but so thank you, QT, for getting my full name on AEW there. That was very, I'm very blessed for that. And thank you, Top Fight, for letting me get in push-ups.
Right on. So, how was the match with Top Flight and stuff? Did you have a good time? Like, did you enjoy that?
Oh, it was amazing. And like, those early Canadian crowds were huge. Like that one in Winnipeg, I know not everybody was in, but the peak of the draw, or so I've heard, was 7,300 people,
Oh wow.
and that was in the MTS Center there. I don't know what it's called now, the Bell Center.
Is that the most people you've wrestled in front of?
Oh, it has to be. Yeah, yeah. Most people I've wrestled in front of for sure. Um, but like, no, it was great. It was such a good experience, and like I said, there probably wasn't 7,300 people because this was before the show, but I mean there had to have been at least a few thousand there, and it was really cool, like being in there and like getting a feel of what it's like, and like these talents. Like I've been on shows with Top Flight before they were signed. I haven't worked them, but I've been. It was kind of funny because we were reminiscing about some of the shows that we had been on and how unsavory some of the locker rooms may have been, and things like that. But uh, it's also cool, like you just hear your name and you look, and like there's people in the crowd that because like I've wrestled in Winnipeg a lot. I know I have a lot of friends in Winnipeg, a lot of friends in the
Mm.
business, and who used to be in the business in Winnipeg. And it's just, I don't know, it was really, that one was like really special. The Regina one was really special as well, in different ways. But that first one, like, man, you just don't, I don't think you forget that. And then to have Sean as my tag partner, like, oh man, icing on the cake.
Can you kind of compare like the vibe of being backstage at an AEW show to the vibe of being backstage as a an enhancement guy at a WWE show?
I would say, I don't know. They're both very like well done, professional production, like just crazy amount of talent that are just around. I don't know if it's necessarily how it's laid out and how the arenas are laid out, but it seemed we were a little closer to the talent, maybe, in terms of like saw a lot more of the talent rather than WWE. And I don't know if that's just happens to be arena layout, like fluke, right? They just kind of find a place for you. It's not like you're a priority, which is fine. We're just extras, right? But no, they're both. Oh, it's just fantastic. It's just a fantastic experience, man. They're long days. That's the only thing that I would. But I mean, they're long days for everybody, right?
Yeah, but it seems like it would definitely be a worthwhile experience for sure. Let's talk a little bit about like some of your other indie matches and whatnot, because I'm sure like even though you've been on a lot of these, you've been on some AEW and WWE. I'm sure you've actually wrestled some WWE and AEW like alumni on indie shows. Can you talk about any of those matches?
Well, the most famous one for myself is when I wrestled Cody Rhodes in Saskatoon, right in between his stint with WWE and it was the last show he did before he started AEW. Actually, it was like 2 weeks before All In, the first All In Chicago. There, I think it was in Chicago, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so I think I was his last show before that. Maybe I'm wrong, but. So that was a really cool experience, and that's why I went down the train with the Nightmare Factory, is like hopes of, hey, do you remember me? Like, and he did, to his credit, but like, you know, I've become somewhat friends with him since, and all those guys that I've trained with. He was an amazing experience. That was it's probably still one of the most high profile matches I've ever had. I've wrestled other very cool talent, like Eugene. I wrestled on a Wavell Star show. That was really fun.
That'd be cool.
That was nerve-wracking because that was what, 2015, 2016? It was a while ago, but he didn't call a single thing. He called it all in the ring. And of course, you know, you're a little nervous being in there with the name, but
yeah,
it was funny because I was like, hey, you want to go over anything, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, I'll kind of let you know. So I didn't pester him, but then match time, we didn't go over a single thing. So that was nerve-wracking because it's Eugene, right? But no, it was really good. And then,
I mean, that's a nerve-wracking situation, regardless of if it's a name guy or not. Like that's happened to me. I wrestled Dead Zone, and I walked up to him before the show, said, "Hey, man, we're wrestling tonight. What do you want to do?" He goes, "You know how to wrestle. I'll see you in the ring." I was like, okay. All right.
Definitely can be. I mean, I had my share of it, especially in early HIW, and one of my first feuds was against Wavell.
Mm-hmm.
And doing I've wrestled Wavell a lot, and I owe Wavell, honestly, like I can't put Wavell over enough. He really taught me a lot, and he, you know, he's the only other guy from here that's ever really sort of been somewhere or been close to doing something. Like he's had WWE matches, he wrestled in OVW for however long. Like he's a little more polished and a little more experienced in those ways than a lot of the guys on the indies are, right? And he really taught me a lot because he was one of my first feuds when I was really young. So he really taught me to settle down, you know, just it's okay, calm, like just be confident, all a ton of things I can't even say, but it really helped me along. But I've had lots of matches with him where it's just like we just go out. It was funny too because one of them during the death tour, the ref asked me what the finish was. He's like, "Do you know who's going over?" And I'm like, I said Wavell. He's like, "Do you know who he's going over with?" I'm like, "Nope." It's like, okay. And we were in the ring when he asked me that. Like Wavell was coming out.
Oh, okay.
So I do have some experience with that kind of stuff, but I agree, it is nerve-wracking. It absolutely can be. But
I got to admit, it's a whole different set of stresses for me because, like, if I don't know what's going to happen, then I'm stressed out because I don't know what's going to happen. But if I do know what's going to happen, then I'm stressed out because am I going to remember everything while we're in the ring, like, you know? And so I've got that whole stress out. Like, I ended up being in a number of matches with Dead Zone, and by the last time I did it, it was like I walked up to him and he's like, "Yeah, this is the finish. We'll figure the rest out. You want to call anything, go for it." And so like we got in the ring and I just started saying, "Oh yeah, do this, do that," and we we kind of like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like a 5-star match or nothing. The Canadian Goose as evil Santa Claus versus Dead Zone, it's pretty ridiculous stuff. But I just kind of fall back on like improv, because I used to do a lot of like improv theater, so that's
that
kind
would
of
definitely help.
what I fall back on in those situations where it's like, okay, just rules of improv. Don't
And there's guys
say,
that you wrestle too, like you have kind of sequences that or that you do or whatever. Like like I've wrestled Cannibal Kelly a lot, and I can't say enough good things about him either. But it's funny because we'll just be like, oh, dropkick sequence, okay, and we know like the whole thing. Oh, this, do the Rana, okay, do the sequence into her. Like you get kind of sequency into things, and if you go to different towns, you can get away with using the same sequences and hell, even the same matches, because different people, right?
yeah. That's, I mean, I did a tour of Saskatchewan with the CWE, and every night we would have the same match. And I mean, it was always in a different town and stuff, so it wasn't like we were the same match for the same fans or anything. But it was an interesting way to wrestle, because it wasn't something I was used to.
Yeah, and the thing I really like about the small town stuff too is that's where you get to try stuff. That's where you
Yeah.
get to like just banter and say things and have fun and see what gets a reaction. And if my sort of rule is like, if I do something like twice and it doesn't get a reaction, okay, I'm not going to do that. But if I do something and it gets a reaction, I'm going to try it. And you can clean out the kinks, and you clean out the timing on your delivery, and just kind of polish it up. And that's what those other towns are like perfect for, just like those kinds of things and developing yourself.
At what point did you make your way over to Alberta and start wrestling for the PWA and whatnot?
It was a long time ago. Honestly, it was so funny because PWA was like this little, their own little club, like their own little, like they were hard, at least for me, in the appearance, they were very hard to get into back in the day. When did we start wrestling for them? I want to say like 2015, probably 20. Like it was quite a while ago. Must have been 2015 or early 2016. But the thing that got our foot in the door was we brought in Blaze for one of our big shows to wrestle Sean, and they had this fantastic match that was only like 6 minutes, and they did, oh my god, they did everything, but it wasn't too much, and it was just, I remember watching it being like, wow, that was very good, sort of thing. So then Blaze kind of got Sean in, and then Sean got Prime in, and then Prime and Sean got me and McSugar in at the time when we were tagging. And then it just kind of snowballed into the Saskatchewan car of wrestlers that started coming. But PWA seemed like such a boys and girls club back in the day, because like lots of guys would go wrestle for RCW and stuff, but PWA, nobody was getting in there, it seemed.
Yeah, I never wrestled for PWA. I would have liked to.
I mean, lots of really good talent, lots of, I mean, really cool stuff. Lots of, you had your old school guys like Duke Durango and Chris Steele and stuff that were, the locker room was really good in the PWA, and there wasn't any like toxicity or cancer. And I've been pretty lucky to be a part of some really good, like LPW is a really good locker room too. Like,
yeah,
very lucky
that
that we got some really good locker rooms going in indie wrestling. And we've kind of, like I said earlier, we got away from the toxicity and the shitty drama attitudes. But PWA was very good too, and made some like very good friends from it that are still my friends to this day. So,
have you had the opportunity to travel to BC or any of the Maritimes or whatnot?
I've never done BC actually, and I've never gone super far east other than doing extra work and stuff. So, I mean, that's something I'd always like to do. I do know people in the Maritimes. I do know a lot of people out east. Obviously we know people in BC because they come down to LPW and stuff. I would love to actually, like WrestleCore looks like they're really fun, cool shows out there, like, I mean, obviously Defy in the Pacific Northwest, that's like should be everybody's goal. That one.
Yeah, it seems pretty good. I had a lot of fun. I wrestled for 365 Wrestling on Vancouver Island, and that was a great time. They had a
Where were they
really,
based out of? Victoria?
yeah, they had a hell of a house there that night too. It was sold out. It was
Oh,
awesome.
that's cool. I
Yeah.
actually I lived in BC when I was younger, and I grew up an hour out of Victoria. So
Oh, really? Where did you live?
I live in Souk.
Oh, right, right. I've been to Souk many times.
Oh,
They
really?
actually
Yeah.
they run wrestling shows in Souk now. Can you believe that?
That's I believe it. That's wild though. But like, man, I don't. Well, no, I got a lot of friends who are that I grew up with that are still around there. Maybe I could bring a few more people if I ever wrestle out there.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it because when I was growing up, you'd be lucky to get like one or two indie wrestling shows on the entire island all year, you know,
I
and
didn't even know about any of that. Where did you live?
in Victoria.
Oh, you lived in Victoria. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I lived in Sioux for 12 years. Like that was I was born in BC. So
I used to go to I when I first started helping at wrestling shows, it was for Victoria City Wrestling that was run by Vid Vane in like 2005, and we would
wow,
just go and help set up the ring and put out posters, and I ended up doing a couple of like interviews and stuff, like being Mean Gene or whatever. Yeah, so
that's so
that kind
wild.
of.
Because like as a kid, I would have loved to have gone to indie wrestling, but I mean, people we just don't know that these things exist. Like I didn't know. I mean, it makes sense when you like sit and break it down. But my first indie wrestling show was when I was 18, and I didn't know indie wrestling like existed. And it was after my me and my parents had moved to Manitoba. I lived near Dauphin, and CWE was in Dauphin, and my mom like called me or texted me one day. This is before I trained to wrestle or anything, and I was a big mark, right? But she's like, "Oh, there's a wrestling poster, like a wrestling show coming to town, and it's got Billy Gunn on it." And I'm like, "Oh my god!" Like, like a name, right? This guy was in WWF, WWE, and like I grew up watching this guy. Like, so that was the first indie show I'd ever went to was in 2010, and actually, it's funny like looking back at the people that were on it because there's Billy Gunn, Michael Elgin was on it, Davari was there, Duggan and Kenny Omega I think were the tag champs at the time. Sanchez, like some of these guys that I've had the pleasure of working now, it's kind of weird that you watch as a fan. And like even when I was down in Georgia, I told Billy Gunn about like the story of like meeting him in Dauphin. He thought it was just like hilarious that like here we are like 10 years later and you're helping train me to wrestle, and you like my push-up shit. Like he likes it, and it's like this is so cool. Like this is the guy that when I was a kid, I always liked the Outlaws and stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I remember the first WWF magazine I ever bought was like Billy Gunn was on the cover of it, actually, ironically enough. And now this guy likes my gimmick. Like, what is this? This is cool.
I think that's incredible. I think Billy Gunn is like he's like one of the guys that's like the perfect strike between a good gimmick but also like a really fantastic wrestler, you know? Like he
Very
doesn't need to
talented.
fall back on his gimmickry because of how
No.
good he is.
Very good mind, very talented, and like I don't know, I really resonated with him well as a coach. Like he's not like a hold your hand kind of. He's like fucking do, he's like pretty harsh, but like in a good way, like not too much where he's an asshole. I mean,
Yeah.
he can be, but it's not in any malicious of a way. That's how I was like kind of brought up coaching with hockey and stuff, and how my dad was. He was like pretty hard, pretty gruff guy, But then when you get it right, it's like fuck yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like yes, feels
Yeah.
good. Like he's just being tough because he loves the business and he wants you to be better. That's literally it.
I watched a wrestling seminar with him on YouTube, and there was a lot of like really good information in there. One of the things that I was pretty bad for was I get the guy in the headlock to do the takeover, and I would just judo them over,
Oh yeah.
And then, but I was watching the Billy Gunn thing, and he's like, "No, just get down on all fours. They take their own bump, and it looks great and looks harsh, like you're actually hurting them, but you're not." And so there's like just the little things like that. I really, really think that Billy Gunn is top notch.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about all the training that was down there, but his like mind for it, and the places like he's very good at like where you place something and place intensity and where you fire up and where you do this and where you do that. Like it just makes sense, and he really helps you make sense and like you're selling and just everything. I can't say enough good things. If somebody has the extra money or has the desire and wants to go down and train with them, like I would absolutely tell them in a heartbeat to go. I just had a really good experience, and it's Georgia. This is probably the nicest place I've ever been to.
Oh, really?
Oh, dude, there's no wind. You take it for granted. The temperature is really nice. It's not very humid, and there's no wind. That's the big one. You forget how much in the prairies, like it's always breezy, it's always windy, it's always something. It's just fucking silent and calm there all the time, and it's fantastic.
Is it like hot as balls?
Well, we were down there in the winter time, so it was pretty like some days were warm, but it wasn't like anything crazy. I mean, I think probably the hottest days we had were like maybe 30 in like September when we got down there, but nothing crazy. I assume it gets pretty hot in the summer, but like you said, it's also not that humid. If you've ever been to Florida, Florida's like wearing a wet blanket, right? Like,
no, I've never been to Florida.
you're not missing out much. I don't really care for Florida that much, at least the weather wise, but Georgia, fantastic. And houses seem very much more affordable and stuff. Like I remember we were driving around and you just see like these brand new builds and these, who knows the quality, but in these gated communities, and they're starting at like 350, and it's like, man, this isn't a gated community. So imagine what you could get that's just like in probably a good area. You could probably find something for a lot less.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never had any inclination to like move to the States. I really have I have a great deal of appreciation for free healthcare. You know,
don't get me wrong. I love Canada, but man, I love our neighbors to the south too, and the people there. Southern hospitality. It's not just a stereotype; it's a thing, man. Legit, people are so friendly down there.
I have gone to the States. Like I've been there a couple of times. I've never gone there to wrestle, but every time I've been there, it's definitely an enjoyable thing for me. But I don't know. I'm just Canada all the way as far as I'm concerned. You know.
Well, there's no minus 50 down there either. So
that's that's true. Yeah, it has been ridiculously cold here these last few days, and yeah.
2 weeks ago it was like +5. What happened? Like what?
Yeah, I have no idea. Like
if you don't believe in global warming and you try and use this as an argument, come on. Like this harsh temperature shift, this is clearly something's not right.
Yeah, something is happening because this like. It's gotten to the point now where it's like, yeah, I'm not going to go anywhere because, like, if I have to stand outside and wait for the bus for 15 minutes, I'm going to get frostbite, you know? So it's not happening.
Absolutely.
There's I don't know if this is going to be up before or after. As far as I know, probably after, but you never know. If we talk about it, maybe Spencer will deal with this and put it up beforehand. But you've got the LPW Oil Rumble coming up. How do you feel about that?
That's so cool. Like we got the Wrestle in the Saddle Dome a few years ago for PWA when they did the Rumble in the Dome. I think that's what it was called. And that was a really cool experience. Despite having to wrestle on the ice, which that kind of sucked. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you because it's just so cold.
Did the ring move around or anything while you were like?
I think it did a bit, but like honestly, what the problem was like everybody knows about the infamous red ring in Calgary, the PWA red ring, and like people have talked about it on things. And for the fans that don't know, this ring was, as far as I understood, it was an old boxing ring maybe, and it was gimmicked to be a wrestling ring. I could be wrong. But it was stiff as fuck. Doesn't matter. It wasn't like terrible. Like it kind of sucked, but I mean, HIW had stiff rings too. So like I kind of used to it in a way. There was like a couple years in HIW where we had one layer, like we had this black foam padding and we had one layer and that was it over the wood. So you're pretty much walking on the wood. So
we had issues in the RCW for a little while. We had the foam there, and he kept using the same foam for like 3 years, and it got down to it was like this thick, and he's got like bolts that stick out under the wood, so you'd bump. Oh, I'm gonna bolt You know,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So they ended up changing it, and he actually got these real thick white ones, and we put those on, and we used those for 2 shows because they were really nice and soft to bump in, but you couldn't run worth shit. It was like trying to run in quicksand. It was awful.
Yeah,
So I think,
there's a fine line for sure. But
yeah,
this red ring, like the big thing that I had the problem was the padding. He had this hard foam padding, and it was like it kind of squished, but it was kind of like I describe it like water. If you hit it, it's hard, but if you like step and push, like you can break the surface tension or whatever. But put that all on the ice, and then you're cold as well on the ice. Like I actually injured my back pretty good during that show because it was just so cold. Like I'm fine now, but it was at the time like oof. But no, I'm super excited to wrestle. I'm very curious how the setup's going to be. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be on the ice.
No, from what I've heard, what I was told is they have like remember the Survivor Series where they had like Gino Hernandez doing the push-up record or the bench press record on the stage off to the side there. Well, apparently they have like a big stage off to the side, like off the ice where they're going to set up the ring.
Right on.
Which I think is I mean, it's got its ups and its downs. It's not centered in the middle of the arena, but at the same time, everybody's still going to be able to see it. You're not going to have to go out at the end of the hockey game and wait for an hour while they set up the ring.
I assume too, like the good thing about that is like they'll have lots of cameras on it, so you'll be on the jumbotron anyways. Like
yeah. I'm sure that's going to be amazing.
Watch.
Yeah, I'm Spencer invited me to come down and help out and do ring crew and stuff at the show. Right, so I'm really looking forward to coming.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't wrestled Blaze in quite some time, and I mean, I still do. He's one of the, I mean, some of the people I've been in the ring with. He's definitely one of the best for sure. He's the guy I attribute to kind of lighting a fire under me again, because like you wrestle the same guys, and then even the good guys out here, like don't get me wrong, they're good, but you get used to things. And I remember the first time I wrestled them, I'm like, oh, this is what it should be like. You know, this is this is it. You know, this guy was just next level. And I'm really excited to wrestle him again. He was one of my greatest opponents, one of my favorite opponents, if not the favorite. So, and it's been a few years since I've actually been able to wrestle him. So all I got to worry about is my cardio because that guy just goes. But that being said, I also want to win because the winner gets to wrestle Vaughn Vertigo, who is a guy that I met out in AEW in Ontario last summer. And you know what? I want to wrestle that guy. I've been bugging people. I'm like, hey, book me versus Vaughn Vertigo. Let's go. And even he said, like, yeah, let's work. So, like, I'm going to win that grand championship so I can fucking wrestle Vaughn Vertigo finally.
Well, good for you, man. I think that'll be awesome. Yeah, I can't really add much to that. I know, like you say, I think Blaze is amazing as well. Like he's one of my wrestling trainers, right? So I have a great deal of respect and appreciation for him. Me and him have never actually had like a one-on-one like match on a show, but hopefully one day we will. You know, it's just one of those things where I'll be pretty nervous about it. I'll be pretty nervous for it. You know,
he's like I said, he's just next level and like really helped me rise to the next level and be one of the more top guys around here and be as like better as a wrestler and become, like I said, one of the more guys that I guess it's weird saying, but I'm like kind of a vet around here in a way. I don't know.
Well, you got over 10 years of experience. I mean, I would say.
Yeah, it's still indie experience, but like it's still just like weird saying that because I still feel like when I was 20. You know what I mean? So just maybe a little smarter on everything nowadays. But that being said, immense respect to Blaze professionally, personally, just a good guy, good human being. And yeah, we were very close. I mean, I'd like to still think we are, but we were very close for a lot of years as well. And I'm really excited, like I said, to get to actually be able to wrestle him again. It's been a little while and things have changed and I haven't wrestled him since I was back from the States. So
I think that if you're going to be wrestling in the biggest arena in Edmonton, then Michael Blaze is the one person you want to be wrestling in that situation.
That's the guy you put on top for sure.
Yeah.
And it's nice that they think that I should be the one matching him, but you know what? We do good stuff together, so I don't blame them at the same time too.
Do you have any other really big stuff coming up for you on the horizon there?
Honestly, nothing like out of the ordinary. Like I said, Winnipeg Pros coming up in the next couple months. Like we got Dungeon, we got the L2 LPW shows in the Rogers Place. Like I said, I want to wrestle Von Vertigo. Somebody book that, please. Spencer, if you're listening to me, bring him back and book him against me. Mark Wheeler too. I'd like to wrestle him.
You know, I've seen that Dungeon Wrestling seems to be using Chris Masters a lot, and I think you and Chris Masters would be tremendous.
I think that would be as well. Now that you say that, yeah, I agree. And you know what? I'm going to say this too. I would love to wrestle QT on an actual show. We had a couple training matches, and they seemed fine. Nothing went awry. So, like, I would love to wrestle him on an actual show. I would get to learn a lot. Maybe I teach him something. I would love to, obviously, more AEW opportunity, but I would love to wrestle Eric Bugenhagen as well. He was recently released.
Oh, he was in WWE.
Rick
yes,
Boogs.
Yes. Yeah. He tore his quad, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, that's a really gnarly injury. If I'm not mistaken, you actually had a torn ACL for a while.
No, I tore my pec.
Oh, okay. I thought it was ACL because I was going to be
same as Blaze. We both tore our pecs.
Okay.
Time, but we're all good now. But Boogs, funny enough, when I did an Evolve camp down in 2019, he was at one of those Evolve shows. And funny enough, the champion of that show was Austin Theory at the time. Like, it's just crazy to looking at the names that were at that show. But Bugenhagen and I had a pretty decent conversation because he saw my water jug and he saw Pantera on. He yelled out across the room, Pantera, because he's a big metal guy, right? So like we had a big conversation about music and stuff, and it was really cool. And I still talk to him on Instagram once in a blue moon here, and he's somebody since that interaction, such a genuine, such a good guy, you know. So like I think we could have some fun.
I think that's awesome. Like you know, there was only one experience I had that wasn't so great, and that was when RCW brought in Jeff Jarrett. He was a bit of a dickhead.
Oh, really?
At that point in time, he's gotten himself all back together now, and he's doing great. But yeah, that one time, it was not a great experience. But like, I'm glad to hear that. Like, Rick Boogs, like, it just seems like such a random name, but then like, yeah, like I can totally see, like, he's in the locker room and he seems like a fun guy on TV. He's probably pretty cool backstage. Like, I feel like, I don't know, like, I don't know, I can't speak for anyone else, but when I come to wrestle, I do it because I like it and it's fun, you know. So like I want to come and have fun in shows. I want to do well and put in a good performance. I don't want to shit the bed or make anyone look bad or anything like that. But like, yeah, I think that if we're all there and we're all having a positive, good time, I think it makes it so much better.
Everybody can tell who's being genuine in the ring. The fans can tell. Everybody can tell. That's where I like to think that, like, when you see the successful people, that is like a part of their success is because they're being genuine. Like I every time I'm in LPW, I'm smiling and laughing in the ring. I don't care. I'm having fun. And I think everybody can tell.
I completely agree with you. I think that LPW is really, really kind of, I think they've become like, yeah, just one of the best, like, camaraderie locker room type things, and I say that as a guy that just kind of comes and hangs out in the locker room, you know, to just be there to help if I'm needed or whatnot. And of course I do the announcing on the Thursday nights, you know, but everybody there has just always been super cool, and it's everything's on the level. Like, nonsense and like buffoonery is not really tolerated, you know, but it's also like encouraged.
The quality of people that we have.
Yeah,
though. I feel like those things just, people aren't going to be doing that because they're just not like that. They're a little more mature and they're a little more grown up, and they're like, we picked some of the better for our locker room for that reason. And that's one of the reasons why they're some of the better, because they're who they are as people as well. And like Spencer's like awesome. Like I love the last show that I got to do, raise a few $100 for the Stollery Children's Hospital just because a fan brought a sign. Like one of my friends started that, but people in the crowd added to it. Like it was only, I forget what it started at. It was like 30 push-ups for $100 or something. And like people in the crowd actually saw that sign and were like, hey, let's add more. And it got up to like $400.
Oh, wow. How many push-ups did you end up doing?
I did 50 of the 80. So I brought some kids in to help me do the other 30. But I
am notoriously bad at push-ups.
Oh.
Yeah, but we did push-ups on Thursday. We were doing that training, and we were doing the number generator thing. And so he asked me first, Goose, you give me a number 1 to 5. So I said, whatever, 5. You know, I've been working real hard this week. If it's a big number, it's a big number. Let's just do it and get it over with. And then he's like, okay, it's 90 squats. So we did that. Then he asked somebody else what they wanted, and they gave a number, and it was 92 push-ups.
Oh,
and I was like, oh no. Yeah. But I got down and I did like 20, then took 30 seconds, waited, did more, and I got all the way through all 90. And I wasn't doing them off my knees like I normally do. Like I just did the whole thing, and I felt pretty good about myself.
Next time you did 20 in a row, next time you can do 21 maybe. And then you can add another one, maybe do 22. Just like little improvements, right? Like it doesn't have to be 20 to 50. You do a little bit at a time.
Yeah. It's a new thing for me, but I'm really enjoying it. And it does feel like after you've done something like that, where you're like, well, there's something I just did that I never thought I'd ever be able to do. Cool. What else can I do? You know?
Exactly. Surprise yourself, right?
Yeah. So anyway, I want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast here. I really, really do appreciate it. I apologize for my dogs barking and whatnot. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm looking forward to seeing your match with Blaze at the Rogers Place there on January 21st, I believe.
January, yes, 21st. You're correct.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're hearing this before then, please come and watch. If you're not hearing this before then, I hope you came and watched and enjoyed yourself, because I'm sure I can say with 100% confidence that it was one hell of a show. So, Michael Allen, Richard Clark, thank you so much for coming on here, and hopefully we'll get together and we'll chat some more.
Sounds good to me, man.
All righty, buddy. This has been Monday Night Shaw, and we will see you on the next one.